G'day, how's it going?
Yeah, good. It's myself and Nick Easter here. So congratulations on the captaincy. I just want to check how things in New Zealand with lockdown, how you're coping, how you're keeping fit.
Oh, mate, we've been pretty fortunate here. We're 2 weeks out. We're 2 weeks back at training. This will be our third week tomorrow back at training. So things are pretty close to back to normal here. We're expecting them to announce level 3.
How have you been conducting the training? Are you still in small groups? Have you been sort of distancing and being wary? Or have you been sort of full throttle because you've got it under control over there?
There's a couple of small tweaks at the start, but mainly just around taking our temperature at the start of the day. And I suppose that our facility's been limited to just the bare essential people that we need. So we don't really have people coming and going. We just got a log in, log out system. But in terms of training, it's just been as normal, and probably just a little bit more of a focus on hygiene and wiping things down and sanitizing. But it's been good to get back into it.
Could you just share with us that moment that you got the phone call about the captaincy and what that felt like, and what it means to you to be captain of the All Blacks?
Yeah, so I suppose because it got announced during lockdown, a lot of people assumed I only found out not long beforehand, but it was actually a face-to-face. Ian Foster came around to my place back in February, early February, and I didn't have any idea actually. We were just chatting rugby. He'd newly been announced the All Blacks coach, so I just assumed he was getting around a few of his sort of more senior All Black players, catch up, and then he sort of sprung the question just towards the end of the conversation. Took me back, obviously, and but it didn't take me long to know that I wanted to say yes and was up for the role. So the feeling is just hugely humbled and just feel very privileged.
What sort of captain? It never even entered your thoughts when he was round the house that he was going to ask you?
Well, the fact that I knew that he'd gone and seen a couple of the other boys, I think he'd been down to Wellington, caught up with might have been Artie, and up to Auckland, he'd caught up with Bowden, Barrett. So I just thought he was sort of getting around, and he might wait a wee bit longer. So.
No, it's a tremendous honour, obviously, and comes with its pressures. But I'm sure you'll be able to cope with it. If regards to captaincy, you've had two great captains you've played under for the All Blacks in Richie McCaw and Kyran Reid. They're keeping it in the back row family, which I'm a fan of myself. Given the ruck is the most contentious issue, and it's the one you've got to sort of try and influence the referee or your players more than anything else in the game. I think it's only right to have a member of the back five in there, but especially the back row. But you would have learned a lot off Richie and Kyran, and you'll have your own style of captaincy. Do you want to are you able to sort of divulge into sort of what your style would be like in maybe similarities or differences with the previous two? Yeah,
sure. I mean, pretty good apprenticeship, eh? Been under those two guys.
Yeah.
So look, first and foremost, I consider myself very fortunate to have learnt so much off two pretty special players and leaders. I think leadership's one of those things that you're not born with it, but you sort of just learn and evolve along the way. And I've got no doubt that being exposed and having roughly 8 years, four with each, has helped mould my leadership. And I'd like to think I'm a leader who's pretty inclusive. I like to hear other people's thoughts and ideas before, and I sort of use that to help form my own to some extent as well. I'd like to think, I'd never ask the players to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Yeah. Like I'll be putting my body on the line and doing everything I can to make sure we win. But also just try and be a good, approachable bloke too. Someone that people want to follow, someone who's respected, and you earn that on and off the field.
Well, there's quite a few players in the team who you can help and rely on. Lots of senior players within there. But we're all looking forward, or I was looking forward. I suppose the match I was looking forward to most this year would be New Zealand coming over to play against England, a revenge match from the World Cup semi-final. I don't really want to mention it because I know New Zealanders take it personally, the semi-final, but. Just going back to that semi-final, it was just one of those games. You had a fantastic game against, I think it was Ireland the week before, and England was stuttering through the tournament. And just what was your feelings in that match? It looked like everything just went right for England, and couldn't quite click for New Zealand.
Yeah, you summed it up quite well. And I think just within the space of those 3 weeks, those 3 playoff games from the quarters all the way through to the finals. If you look at all of those games. It just goes to show, I think, how much of a challenge a World Cup is and how difficult it is to be up week after week, and the mental and physical ability, mainly mental, I'd say, to get to that state that you need to every week. I mean, South Africa, without doubt, saved their best game for the final.
Yeah.
If we go back even further, like England played their best game against us, and unfortunately we played our best game the week before that. So that it just highlights how difficult that is. In saying that, we knew that going into a World Cup, but highlights it again, I suppose.
Have you had? I suppose you probably haven't had any sort of debrief or anything on the World Cup, and you'll probably just want to move on. And I'm a big fan, like most of the rugby lovers in the world, of New Zealand rugby and how you guys think about the game and like to be a couple of steps ahead. Just interestingly, Warren Gatland at the Chiefs, has had a long time. Obviously he played New Zealand coach of the Chiefs beforehand and interim, but he's coached Ireland, Wales, Wasps up in the Northern Hemisphere. He's been a tremendously successful coach over here. Have you recognised any sort of big influences that he might have brought back from Northern Hemisphere rugby? I mean, rugby's rugby really, but there are subtle differences and changes in philosophy and approaches, aren't there, between the Northern and the Southern Hemisphere? Since he's come back to the Chiefs, has he managed to sort of implement anything that's slightly different in what you've done before and previously with New Zealand and the Chiefs?
Yeah, look, we're obviously really excited that a man of his calibre was coming to coach us, and for some of us who played a wee bit longer, I've had the attitude of going in with like a really open mind and wanting to learn off him, and he's been really impressive actually. He's come in, he's not someone with any ego whatsoever, but at the same time you sort of get he's the boss, and he can get you on edge, which is good. You want that from a head coach. But what I've enjoyed is that he's sort of sat back a little bit, watched how we've been going about things, because the makeup of our coaching group is similar to the last 2 or 3 years. And then the further on we've got, he sort of just comes in and says what he thinks, what can work, and then we try it out. So he hasn't sort of come in and just tried to rewrite the script straight away. He's come in and just made subtle tweaks here and there, and we've had a really open mind to that. And I think that's what's helped it work so far. I mean, we've only had about 4 or 5 games before this COVID-19, but it's only 2 weeks before we get back on the track. So really, honestly, really been enjoying them.
The big talk at the moment is trying to get a worldwide rugby calendar. I mean, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, trying to collide and make it easier to play against each other. What's your thoughts then on trying to sort of get together and have a better calendar? Would that work for New Zealand?
Oh, mate, I think it's the way forward. It's just it's sort of above my pay grade, but trying to work out how it works in. I mean, I think we all agree it would be awesome. I think what doesn't help is that each of the competitions, whether it's the Six Nations or the Rugby Championship, are sort of owned by different entities. So, like, it's if it was all under, say, World Rugby, things might be a little bit more flexible. But yeah, who knows? I mean, after a year like this, next year might be the year to change things up. And I think even from a player's perspective, I've been playing roughly the same competitions since my first year playing professional. So something a little bit different would be cool, and I reckon the fans would really get on board with that too. But geez, what that looks like, I'm not sure. I think there's been a wee bit of chat down here about the days of old-fashioned tours. Like a month-long tour. Imagine if we went over and played England 3 times and maybe a couple of a game against a couple of the clubs. How cool that would be, and maybe a couple of years later it goes the other way. So yeah. We'll
yeah, it's funny you say that. We've spoken at length, haven't we, Brax, about bringing back the old tours, and so you get to know the personalities and the team that's travelling, and it also asks a lot more questions in terms of rugby, doesn't it? If you were to play England or Ireland a 3-test series over here, as opposed to sort of dotted around, the next game you're going to know a little bit more about each other. The next game you're going to know a little bit more about each other, and it just generates that hype and interest a bit more, and also would spread the game across the country in the UK and France and Ireland, where you guys obviously play at different stadiums. Speaking of new competitions, cannot wait for your guys' new competitions. I'm going to try and pronounce it. I apologise if I can't get it. Aotearoa.
Yeah, right? Nice, mate. Yeah, that's nice.
And it was terrible. But, mate, I just can't wait for that to start and get going. Miss rugby so much, just like everyone else. But that's a different competition. And you've got, everyone, all the superstars are playing amongst each other. It's sort of a bit of a throwback, isn't it, to back in the old provincial days when every sort of inch and quarter mattered, and you stoked up the rivalry and the tribalism within the fans. Obviously, the fans aren't going to be able to come into the stadiums as yet. But it'd be interesting to see not only what happens on the field, but also how much this can galvanise the supporters in New Zealand as well. Because, I think Southern Hemisphere rugby, you'll accept, has been dwindling in terms of numbers turning up to games, both in, the domestic provincial competition and Super Rugby as well. And this might just be the trigger and the spark once audiences are allowed back in, to getting bums on seats again.
Yeah, mate, it's a fair comment. Look, I think during this lockdown period, and I know we've had it pretty good here in New Zealand, but it sort of showed the importance of the nurses, doctors, police force, etc., who have helped keep the country running. And I think where sport has a part to play now is that we're getting back to some level of normalization, is bringing like people together like that, giving them something to support and cheer about, and so I think you're right. Hopefully, the way things are going here, it could be a month, 6 weeks, maybe the back end games of this competition we'll be able to get some crowds in, and so that'd be pretty exciting. But the competition itself, it's going to be tough, that's for sure. Yeah, but we're looking forward to it. It seems like you said, we've been missing rugby, and it's like all the boys have come back in good nick from lockdown. It's been awesome the last 2 weeks to have a bit of banter with the lads and throw the ball around again and get ready for some contact.
So just last question from me anyway. I just the one big thing about the great thing I loved playing against New Zealand was the haka. So how's that work now? Is it going to be a new haka? You're going to be leading it from the front. Smith at the back. I just remember some of the hackers over the years, how they've changed, and now you look like you've all got the right timing. But I suppose new captain, new hacker, new change.
Look, that's one thing I haven't thought too much about. One thing I will say, there probably won't be a new hacker. Right. Keep it traditional, but I think we'll see. We'll come together, and there's a couple of guys who can bounce some sound ideas off. You know, a little bit more about Māori culture and tradition and the Kiwi haka than myself. But yeah, it's no doubt it's always an honour and privilege to do it.
Sam, from myself and Brax and Ruck It, we'd just like to thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to us. Many, many congratulations on your appointment, and we look forward to seeing you on the pitch, mate, in a couple of weeks, and can't wait for the new tournament to start off. And then clearly, obviously, you in the black shirt as well, and leading them out whenever that may be. But look, we really appreciate the time you've given us, and wish you all the best, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.
fellas. Cheers for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Cheers.